Hey everyone, welcome to Your Enneagram Coach, the podcast. I'm your Enneagram Coach, Beth McCord, and today I am super honored to have my special guest because he doesn't need any introduction into the world of the Enneagram because it's Russ Hudson. Yes, the Russ Hudson who has been pioneering Enneagram work for over 4 decades. Russ, in fact, is the co-author of 5 best-selling books, including the widely acclaimed The Wisdom of the Enneagram and Personality Types with Don Riso. Now, his latest work is an audiobook that you can find on Audible, which is called The 9 Gateways of Presence. And that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So I can't wait for you to hear that. And so I highly recommend checking out that work. But it's also not only published work and done many teachings and trainings in his career, he has also developed the scientifically validated Riso and Hudson type indicator, or the READY. And that is a great test to take to find your Enneagram type. Now, he's also appeared on many platforms like Good Morning America, the CBS Morning Show, and he travels globally sharing the profound wisdom of the Enneagram. Now, for me, Russ has been such an impactful teacher in my life. He is one of the best teachers on the Enneagram. He is easy to listen to, a joy, and he makes the complex Enneagram actually understandable and actionable. So I hope that you will check out Russ Hudson's website, russhudson.com. He's also on Instagram as Hudson-Russ, and you can find him also on YouTube. And on YouTube, it is Russ Hudson Teachings. So check out the show notes for all the places that you can find and learn from Russ Hudson. All right, so let's dive in to today's interview with Russ. Russ, it is so great to have you with me today. Thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Thank you, Beth. It is a joy to be here.
Yeah. So I was telling you earlier that I started studying your work back in 2001 when I was 26 years old with 2 littles and ready to pull my hair out, first of all, because I didn't know myself. I was struggling also in our marriage because we were so young. And your work truly helped me to find out why I think, feel, and behave, and to really start that process of growth and maturity that I'm still on, that we're all on.
Yes.
But your work and your work with Don has been so impactful for me. I would love just to kind of hear how your work has evolved over the years, and particularly, kind of what the work you did with Don back in the early days, and then kind of where you are today. So can you kind of share with us kind of how it evolved over time at the beginning?
Sure. Well, when I first got interested in all this, I wasn't so much focused on the Enneagram of personality. I started off back in the late 70s in the Gurdjieff work.
Uh-huh.
And that was, Mr. Gurdjieff was long dead. He died in 1949. But a woman that he put in charge of the work named Madame de Salzman was one of my teachers. And I learned about that. But that work wasn't talking about 9 types. There was the Enneagram, but the Enneagram was a way of coming to an experiential kind of spirituality. I'll just add that people say all kind of weird, uninformed things about Mr. Gurdjieff. He was a Greek Orthodox Christian. He sang in choir, and he died, had a Christian funeral. He was of the Greek Orthodox faith, the Greek family. Anyway, he was saying, and what attracted me to his work originally, he said, we do the work that we might be able to follow the commandments of Christ. He said the ego can't do it.
Right.
And we've got about 2,000 years of evidence of that. So it's like, but this real spirituality is a transformation. It's a shift of our soul. It's a change of heart. And I knew that's what needed. And I was just a crazy young 5 who just wondered if he had any place in this world. So when I encountered this, so much of what I thought was weird made sense. So I was learning that. Somewhere along the way, I encountered Oscar Ichazo's take on the typology in a book by a guy named Charles Tart, which was the first publication of those ideas. And that was again in the early 80s. But then I encountered Don Riso's first book, Personality Types, in the mid to late 80s. and it just rang bells. It made so much sense. And I felt like that he had written things beyond understanding what he had done, which often happens with creative people. So as it turned out, after I read that book, I decided to contact Don. In those days, there was no internet. We didn't have
Right.
cell phones, but there was a teeny tiny little sentence under his picture on the back page of his book, and it said, "Don Richard Riso has a consulting company in New York City, Enneagram Personality Types Inc." And I said, "Well, I live in New York City. Maybe I can find this guy." So I went into directory assistance. Back in those days,
Yeah.
you had to do that. And sure enough, they had a number. And I called the number. This deep baritone voice answers, and it was him. And we started a conversation, and we had to go through all kind of rigmarole to actually meet. We met at the American Museum of Natural History for the first
Hmm.
time, but it started a long conversation. Don had been in Jesuit seminary for 13 years, something like that. He was really wanting to be a Jesuit, but right before his ordination, he came to the conclusion that that wasn't his true calling. That
Hmm.
he had a profound faith, but he didn't think he was supposed to be a priest. He was very grateful for his Jesuit training, but he didn't really know the inner work of the Enneagram, and frankly, none of the popular teachers of the early days did. So
Hmm.
here I come in from left field, and we started a conversation. The thing about the original orientation I learned from the Gurdjieff work is that the Enneagram is about presence and being present. What does that mean? Well, we don't know at first. It's a journey to discover. And so when I speak with my friends who are in more traditional forms of faith tradition, they say, "What does presence have to do with God?" And I said, "Well, whose presence do you suppose it is? There's only one. And
Hmm.
it's not enough to think about it. It doesn't quite matter in the same way what I believe about it. Am I experiencing it?"
Yeah.
And so the earliest Christians in this were really interested in this real communion of being in communion with the divine presence. So how remarkable that we can even do that. So I got interested in this conversation with Don. How does studying our personality help us remember to be present? And I
Hmm.
believe that was the original way that the Enneagram points were understood. That's what
Hmm.
Ichazo was drawing on from the Desert Fathers and from other traditions.
Yeah. So then now you also did personality types as well. Was that the second edition that you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Don
Yeah.
was very courageous. He knew I was this feisty little five, and he knew. He told me. He said, and he told audiences. So I'm not talking out of class. He said, "I knew that your eyes upon my work would find every single mistake, find every shortcoming." And he says, "And I knew they were there." He says, "But I knew if my work was going to stand the test of time, it had to stand
Hmm.
that kind of scrutiny." And
Yeah.
so he kind of handed personality types over to me and said, "Would you look it over and refine it and revise it?" And so I did that. And he
Hmm.
said, he said he couldn't do it. He said, "It's like operating on his own child."
Right.
Couldn't do
Yeah. Totally.
it. but
I
he was
love
very
that.
happy with what I did, and we put out that revised version.
It is absolutely one of my favorite books of all time. I have that always nearby. The levels of development are truly so remarkable and impactful in our own health and recognition, and to know where are we in any given moment, because so often we're just doing life and we don't even realize, like you said, that we're not present in the moment. How would you love for people to utilize not just that book, but also another book that people really enjoy, which is The Wisdom of the Enneagram?
Mm.
And then you've got even a new book out, and maybe you can even speak to that.
Yeah. Well, the idea of the levels, that was Don's big contribution. He did some very other interesting things that we worked on together for many years, and sort of sharpening and refining or rediscovering things. But the levels, I think, made it very explicit that the Enneagram is not a filing system for human beings.
Yeah.
It's a map for our growth. It's a map for our psychological well being, and it's a map for our spiritual growth. It's both.
Hmm.
It's not meant to replace our faith orientation, it's meant to be a support. It's like, you know where you want to go, here's a bicycle.
Yeah, right.
Have a ride if and go where you got to go. But it's a way. I think the core of the Enneagram teaching is to see what in Gurdjieff's language we get identified with, what we get stuck in is not the total truth of who or what we are.
Mm.
So when people get caught up, oh, I resonate with this type, I resonate with that type, that's okay if you understand that you're seeing the pattern that you get stuck in.
Mm.
The real sense of soul of what we are in the mystery of the spiritual life is mysterious, can't be so easily defined. Their qualities, their gifts that come through, their gifts of the spirit, right?
Yeah.
All of that is real, but we walk around trapped with certain assumptions. Now, we also think that there's some biology to that,
Mm.
that, we have what psychology calls a temperament. And so we're all born with a temperament. But our temperament, again, is not our identity.
Mm.
So this ancient and mystical idea is the more you come close to the truth of who you are, the more you come close to the truth of who you are in God or in
Mm.
Christ if you're Christian. So
Yeah.
it's like, there's a journey there, and no one ever said it was easy, or
Right.
it's much safer to hide on your personality and give lip service to this and that, but to actually open up to this inner journey is to be reborn. Just as we were taught.
Yeah.
The, and so when we wrote personality types, I mean, when Don did, he just wanted people to get a sense of the scale of each of the types, from the healthy to the unhealthy. Wisdom of the Enneagram, we wrote to make it really explicit that the Enneagram was about presence and about spiritual development, and it wasn't just to put people in a box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that message has continued to come out. I think more and more people understand it that way. And then the last thing I did was an audiobook. We're in current discussions to get it turned into a book. I did it with Sounds True, but it's available on Audible. But
Hmm.
it's Enneagram, the 9 gateways to presence. How much more explicit can I make it? Uh,
Yeah, right.
but it's looking at the traditional ideas like the passion and the virtues and so forth, and what they mean, and how we can really cultivate
Mm.
ourselves in this journey. And just to
Yeah.
say too, it's again one thing that we try to make clear in all these books. Don used to say it, that the personality cannot fix the personality.
Mm.
We,
Mm-hmm.
our ego cannot fix our ego. And
Yeah.
so that's sometimes the criticism leveled at the Enneagram, as if that's what it is. And I suppose maybe some people are teaching it that way, but that's not the original orientation at all.
Yeah. What I'd love to hear is like what this has done for your own personal work as a type 5, and how you have developed that presence, and how that has also transformed how you've lived and taught, and the kind of the legacy that you're laying forth.
Well, I'm assuming that, the good people listening to us right now maybe know something about the Enneagram. And then if you know the point five, we're kind of loners, we're kind of detached, we kind of don't want to hang out with other people very much. We just want to have a lot of space for our thoughts, because we're trying to figure out all sorts of questions that are very important to us, right? And or solve creative problems, whatever. But it leads to a kind of habit of emotional detachment. It isn't that we don't have feelings, we're just really certain we don't want to share them with you.
Mm.
And that's the fixated view of five. So I got, as we all do, we all turn our Enneagram type into God.
Mm.
Our God
Mm-hmm.
looks a heck of a lot like our fixated personality.
Absolutely. Isn't all God's peaceful and kind, and that's
Yeah,
it?
exactly. It's peaceful and mellow. And No, God is just wisdom and knowledge and consciousness, and and you can go around. The twos have their view, the sevens have their view, whatever. But
Yeah.
I started to see that something huge was missing from
Mm.
my existence. And I was practicing meditation, I was doing prayer life, I was doing everything I was supposed to do, but I came up against a wall.
Hmm.
And what helped me with that wall was seeing the nature of the wall. If I couldn't see what it was that was blocking me, there was no way to get past it. And that's what the Enneagram
Sure.
did. I saw this detachment was just a leftover from my childhood. It's the way that with my temperament, I survived the difficulties of my early life. But it wasn't me. And I didn't want that on all the time as an adult. So my journey as a five has been to be more heartful,
Hmm.
to be more kind, to be more contactful, to be lighter, to have I've always had a sense of humor, but it kind of bubbles up more now. And sometimes this is the thing again where people have a limited understanding of the Enneagram. They'll say, Russ, are you sure you're a five? You seem very kind and heartful and everything. I said, why do you think I've studied it for 30 or whatever it is? If I didn't learn anything, if I was still in the box of five, it would have been useless. So
Yeah.
I still live alone,
Yeah.
still have a lot of books. I still like my alone time. I still get really focused on learning certain things, and that's like my joy. And I also have learned to be a human being and to share my affection and appreciation
Hmm.
of other human beings. And to me, that was a big deal.
Yeah. I love that. And I just, that wall piece, because I feel like, for me as a nine, that wall piece is right there, right? Like I'm constantly wanting everyone to be happy. And what is it? How can I make you happy? And it's just this fixation of trying to keep the peace. And yet you can't, like you said, get to the other side. So what advice would you give, let's say, to me as a type 9 into moving in a more healthy direction? Because I know I've got a lot of type 9s that listen to my podcast and follow me, but really, honestly, for me, I would just love to hear your insight.
Well, I always love to tell my dear nines that this world would be in deep kimchi if it weren't for the nines and the nine energy.
Hmm.
And when you think about what your contribution of peace, harmony, understanding, uh, holding different points of view, how could we ever think that's not important these days? It's
Right.
so important. And to do so in a beautiful and creative and invitational way that nines are so good at.
Right.
Um, I think my advice for nines always is do not underestimate yourself
Hmm.
and don't listen to people who underestimate you. Sometimes my nine friends get angry when people underestimate them. I sort of tempt them to, and then they do, and I get mad. You know,
Yeah.
like
Well, and that's how your Enneagram started. Is I felt very overlooked in a certain sector, and I was just like, nope, And I realized, and I told you this before, I realized, wait, I'm literally training people to overlook me because I overlook myself,
exactly.
and I had to make that decision. Am I going to continue down that path that I'm familiar with and grew up learning from my family of origin, or am I going to break that pattern and do something completely different and new? And that was really hard and really scary, but it's also been the greatest journey that I ever could have imagined. And because it's like I take a couple steps forward, and I'm like, oh, I just want to nope, you don't see me here anymore. But every time I take that step forward and assert myself, really amazing, joyful things happen. Is
Yeah.
that what you find with nines?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just like I always tell people too. The old rabbit hole isn't going anywhere. You can always jump back into it, but you may find that it's kind of nice to be out of it.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny when you told me your story about your discovery and kind of stepping up to the plate. My one of my good friends is Katie Hendricks, who's been teaching people about relationships and so forth with her husband Gay Hendricks for many years. And I met them when they were first kind of getting going, and Gay's kind of more out there, like a seven or something, and Katie, who knows the Enneagram, I've taught with her, is a nine. And when I first met her, she was just totally in the background. But I was thinking Gay was talking, and he's great. But I was this interesting lady in the background. Who were you? tell me something. And she was just, but
Yeah.
by little, she had the same kind of realization as you, and she started stepping forward. And oh my, she's such a masterful teacher now, helps
Mm.
so many people. And it's just, everybody's got. I always say that we're all in a bottle that's corked, and the cork is whatever we don't want to deal with.
Uh, yes.
Those eights, what's the cork? Vulnerability.
Yeah.
That you might get hurt. Oh no, I don't want to go. I'm going to stay tough. Well, you can do that. Then you never get out of the bottle.
Yeah.
The nines, you have to put out your energy and even be angry sometimes and step up. Oh my God, this is so scary. I don't know if I want to do it, but that's the cork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so let's just go real quickly through the rest of them because I'm sure everyone's dying to hear theirs. So what's the cork of the 1 through the 7?
Not knowing.
Hmm.
Like, to be kind of empty handed and not know what's supposed to happen invites wisdom, which is what the
Mm-hmm.
ones are really after. Ones want
Yeah.
to be wise and do the right thing. But when you think you already know, you block the divine wisdom getting to you. You're,
Yeah.
you're jamming the signal.
Hmm.
Two, it's realizing that your icky, nasty, gnarly feelings do not disqualify you from love,
Hmm.
from other
Right.
human beings, and certainly not from God.
Hmm.
Like, when you might feel envy, you might feel angry, you might feel bitterness, you might feel resentment, even hatred sometimes. At the very least, sometimes we hate ourselves, right? But when you stop editing your feelings to be sort of nice all the time, your heart becomes soil through which spirit can work.
Hmm.
You
That's
know,
great.
three is, gosh, three, it's, I don't have to have a handle on everything.
Hmm.
I don't have to be intact.
Yeah.
I don't have to have it all together all the time. And the terror there is that I don't, or I won't, or that I'm the F word, a failure.
Right.
Like, oh my God, if I don't know what to do, I'm going to be a failure. But actually, being okay with that sort of helps me join humanity and
Yeah.
accomplish things with people and feel part of something bigger than me, which is what my heart really has been looking for.
Hmm.
As three. Yeah, fours. It's like ordinariness,
Okay.
like, and to just see, although I'm always trying to look at how I'm unique, and of course you are, there's also ways you're completely like other people and completely like members of your family. Oh dear God, not that. There are ways you're like your mother and father. Oh no, please, you are. But until you can grasp the truth of that, you can't go further than your self concepts into your authentic identity, into the mystery
Hmm.
of what that is. You're too busy, manipulating all that stuff.
Hmm.
I always noticing with the force about how there's such a wish to be authentic. But how can I say the ego is not the authentic self?
Hmm.
So no matter how much you try to make it unique or whatever, it's never going to be the total truth. And in your heart of hearts, you know that. That's why it's
Hmm.
never satisfying. So ordinary, you find the beauty and richness in the ordinariness.
Yeah.
The ordinariness of life, of having your cup of tea or coffee in the morning, and just this. Wow.
Hmm. Yeah.
Seven's kind of like that too, but for a different reason. So five, well, I already said that's me. It's just it's allowing, kind of like the eight. The eight, it's the vulnerability. It's allowing the sense of contact.
Hmm.
The detachment of five is kind of a breaking of contact. Contact is painful. I
Hmm.
get in contact, what I feel out there is suffering, pain, and craziness. I don't want to be in contact with that. But
Hmm.
if we break contact, we break our connection with the part of us that can receive knowing, that can
Hmm.
really understand anything, that can come to a knowledge of what life is really about, you might say. And
Yeah.
so it's in the restoration of contact, not just with other people, but with myself,
Hmm.
with
Yeah.
the felt sense, like, oh my. It's sort of parallel with the nines. The nines and fives can certainly understand each other's dilemma. It's a little bit different, but there are similarities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then six, it's sixes feel the need to keep the mind going and to keep activity going because they're kind of desperately trying to keep their world intact,
Mm-hmm.
try to keep things safe for themselves, but also for their loved ones, their company, their community, their country, whatever. I've got to do all this. And what they have to learn is to relax that and allow the great silence,
Mm-hmm.
the silence that passeth all understanding,
Mm.
is where the knowledge of what to do comes from. When we're trying
Yeah.
to prefigure it out from our scaredy cat places, it tends to go off track, and so it's sort of it's very hard to understand, but it's through that silence that we start to come into some real understanding of love, the
Yeah.
kind of love that Jesus taught about,
Yeah.
the kind of love that he exhibited. You know,
Yeah.
um, I'll just share, as you know, I was in the hospital recently, and I was very close to death.
Mm.
And in my practice, I got to the very quiet place, and I could feel death as kind of a portal that was right there
Mm.
and just open to the unknown. And I wasn't scared. I have too many. Um, I've been on this journey too long. I kind of know a little bit of how what's what, and I know there's some things I cannot know. And faith is, to me, also being able to live with what you cannot know already.
Right.
Right? It isn't just believing in something you heard at some point. There's more to it than that.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing was, it was through the silence and stillness I felt the presence of a love beyond anything I could ever describe.
Mm.
I can't even try. It's just like it was that everything in the universe was coming out of this love. All
Mm.
existence was only here because of this love. And I was only here because of this love. And it wasn't like coming from any one thing, or it was like everything was that. Like just
Wow.
love forever and ever, amen. Tenderness, kindness. Whenever I think of Jesus, I think of him as the embodiment of that I
Yes.
experienced.
Yes.
So, that's, I get a little tearful. I can't even think about it a little bit without being, really moved by it.
Yeah,
And
because that was just
there's me
that.
getting out of the five.
Yeah, and that was just what, a month ago or so.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
still fresh. And,
Wow.
I don't know, but it's certainly shifting the way I see the world. I mean, I still see people being stinkers and doing crazy stuff and doing things I would not choose to do.
Yeah.
And I feel a kind of affection for them despite that.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah. And
And last but not least,
it isn't like a decision I made. It just is happening
yeah.
through this grace that, there's no other way to talk about it.
Well, and like you said, it's an experience. It's like you literally were enveloped, it sounds like, with love and
Yeah.
radiance.
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. And just sort of melted into that. It was
Mm.
sort of like saying, dude, if when you go, it's going to be kind of like this. So don't worry.
Wow. That, and I think that's what we're all like. Like we might cognitively know that, especially in our belief system,
Yes.
but we're always looking to experience or feel it.
Yes.
And for you to have been so close and to literally be feeling that, I can imagine. And so you'd have to tell me, it releases so much fear of the
Yes.
unknown.
Absolutely. And we talked about this around point six. It's like, yeah, I cognitively knew it. I've heard the same spiritual rumors as everybody else. I know what the story is,
Yeah.
and that helps me sometimes, but it's not the same as the experience.
Hmm.
It's a very different thing. It's sort of like the old fashioned word conversion.
Yeah.
Isn't just a change of what we believe, but it's like something touches us on such a deep level that we can't go back to the old way.
Yeah. And I think, for a five who loves reading and words and knowledge to be without words says so much of the experience that you had.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it's related to the holy idea of nine, holy love,
Mm. Yeah.
So those, those scary terms, love, hope, and faith.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Anyway, I should do seven, right? Can't leave this.
Yeah.
Sevens are going, what
Yeah.
about us? What
Exactly.
about us? No, how can we forget the sevens? No, seven, it's tolerating what we usually call boredom,
Mm.
because boredom is a mask for anxiety. We
Mm.
just join ranks with the fives and the sixes. We're in that triad, and there it is. We have this terrible anxiety that we're going to be trapped. We're going to lose our freedom. We won't be able to get to what we need.
Yeah.
And you have to, there's comes a love for yourself and a kind of what I call holy stubbornness, where I'm just not willing to abandon myself anymore. And so this
Mm.
scared child part of me, I just stay present with that, and
Mm.
the cork comes out of the bottle. It
Wow.
opens the gateway to everything I was looking for as a seven.
Wow. I love that.
We all have to pay our little price of admission.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. No one has a pass here. And
No,
growth is hard, but it is really, really rich and
yes,
so good. Well, one of the things, and I told you this before we hopped on, one of my favorite classes that I actually took from you online, of course, you didn't know I was there, but I was, back in 2016, was the Enneagram Awakenings.
yes,
And I was actually just looking at the transcript again today and sent you kind of what I wanted to talk about. That a lot of people, when they read, Wisdom of Enneagram and some of the other books that you and Riso did, was there's integration and disintegration, like going to stress and going to growth.
right.
But when I was listening to the module 7 in the Enneagram Awakenings, you literally opened up a whole new world that I hadn't heard because, it wasn't in the books. And it made so much sense. And since then, I have seen so many people freed in ways because they now have the knowledge and the understanding of the other two ways that we use the Enneagram lines and arrows. And so, can you kind of walk us through? So, you would talk about the stress point, and then the security point, and then the growth point, and the missing piece. Can you kind of walk through that and then focus on the security point and the missing piece?
Sure, sure. Well, those are the parts that are usually not so well understood. When Don Riso learned the Enneagram in the early 70s, he learned it through a Jesuit seminary. And at the time, there was no model for vertical development or growth.
Mm-hmm.
The levels didn't exist, and there was no discussion in that early work. I think people who had a more subtle understanding of it, probably did know, but it wasn't in the materials that people were passing around in those days. So they made one direction growthful and one direction bad news. But that was not accurate, and that's not what was intended. And I used to have chats with Claudio Nardano. He was a friend, and he agreed. He said, no, 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 it was never meant to be that.
Mm-hmm.
So what we understand is, at whatever level we're at within our own type, sometimes we go to one of these other directions at the same level.
Yes.
So you don't suddenly jump to a high level of the other one or go down to the. It's kind of your levels are a measure of how present and awake we are in any moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm at that level of presence or that level of not presence. As we lose presence, we get more identified with the psychological patterns and defenses. So when we go in the stress direction, I always think of that, which we used to call disintegration, but we stop calling it that because it implies it's something bad. When
Mm-hmm.
you overdo your type to the point that it's making you and everyone you know nauseous, you will tend to go in the stress direction. So, like as a five, I can only contract so much and I break out and just do all kind of impulsive activity like a seven. As a nine, I used to explain to the nines, it's like the old snooze button on the alarm clock. So see, the 9 keep hitting that snooze button until finally you realize you've got 5 minutes to get to work, and now it's panic time, and you're running around trying to handle everything. You're like a 6, and so
Yeah.
they're all pretty easy to understand that way. It's like
Mm-hmm.
bringing in something we actually need to do, but we only do it when the usual way we handle things is run out of gas. Then we jump to
Mm.
the other behavior. And so we kind of know we do that, though. I don't think it's a shock to any 5.
Right.
We go to 7, 9s know they go to 6, 4s know they go to 2. And it's one way, by the way, you can verify you are the Enneagram point you think you are. The inner lines work. If they don't
Yeah.
work, don't get in all this elaborate using tri-type and instincts and counter-type to make up some strange spaghetti. If you are that type, the inner lines work.
Right. Right.
So the other side is the other direction, which we call the direction of integration, is also what we call the security point, and
Mm.
that tends to be more of a shadow. We don't like to admit to it. It doesn't fit our self concept. We have a kind of aversion to it, even, but we do it. And so you kind of have to take a deep swallow and go, okay, yep, I do that. And I don't like it, but I do it. And we only do this, we call it security point, in situations where I'm pretty sure I can get away with it without too many consequences. So with
Right.
people who really love us, or with people who are employed by us, or our kids, people who can't give us too much static about it, they're going to get this, but the general public won't see it. So as a 5, oh gee, I'm me a bully, dominating, controlling, aggressive. No, I'm a little 5. I just like knowledge and I want to be alone. No, you are all those things. 9, oh, see me, see how fabulous I am. Do you know how lucky you are to have me? That narcissistic need. Like 9s have, no, I don't want to be a narcissist. I want to be one of those show offs. But sometimes that
Mm-hmm.
human need pops out.
Well,
8 don't want to be needy, but here I am acting like a 2, and so forth.
and I love that because it is like when you first were talking about it in that module, it was so clear. I was like, like you said, it's like you just kind of want to hide because the very type that you do the security point with is a type that you kind of are annoyed when they do it. Like it's really annoying. Like for me, when I see a 3 showing off and bragging and like, aren't I great? I'm like, oh, please, my 9's, that's what my 9 is saying. But then I will do that around the family. Like, hey guys, do you see what I did? Or, and I was like, oh my goodness, that is so true. Why would it be beneficial for each of the types to know what their security point is, and where is it most beneficial to have that awareness and what to do with it?
Well, it's one of our main shadows. Another main shadow is what we call the blind spot of our instinctual biases. The
Mm-hmm.
instinctual orientation that we neglect is another shadow. And they're just areas, it's sort of like, you know, we're moving toward being a whole soul, a vehicle that can be of service,
Yeah.
to be able to participate in, to use the language of tradition, to be able to be a vehicle that can follow God's will.
Mm. Yeah.
And for that, we need to be more of a whole human being. To the degree that we're caught in these fixations, we're a partial human being. We're not using all of our centers, we're not using all of our capacities, we're defended against certain parts of ourselves. So, shadow work is the part where we're allowing the reclamation of a part of us that's been cut off. And it's not, again, this is where it gets into the question of traditional religion again. It's just like, I can't make that happen. I can be willing.
Yeah.
I can be willing to be with my shadow, and then the magic of grace does the rest. It's like I can see the ways that I'm like an 8, and not the pretty side of 8, the gnarly
Right.
side of 8. And oh yeah, gosh, I do that. It's so humiliating. But will I sit in the truth of it? Yes,
Mm.
yes. And then it becomes like a prayer, like
Yeah.
it's like we're it's like 12 step. I'm asking that these defects be removed from me. It's not so much the behavior as the blockage.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then as the blockage relaxes, as we can own that energy, it starts the process of integration, which is we start to connect with the high side of it. And
Yeah.
there's nobody who stays in the higher side of their own type without doing the integration work. It's that important.
Well, and so like for me as a type 9, so correct me if I'm wrong. So I feel like my presence doesn't matter, my voice doesn't matter. That's that running kind of head trash or record player in my mind.
Yep.
But I want to matter and I want to know that what I have to offer is important. And yet there's that blockage to do it with the everyday people out there. And
Yes.
so I'll do it with my family, like, hey, look what I did, and kind of like show off a little bit out of fear of doing it with the regular public. But it sounds like the point of growth is when I own that my presence matters. Not that I have to
Yeah.
get that knowledge from other people, but that I say, no, my presence does matter. What I have to offer is important, and I need to step out into that three-ish space, the healthy three-ish space, and actually develop myself and move in that direction. Is that?
Yes, exactly. And there is no such thing as a healthy nine that doesn't have some element of that three, that self confidence, that
Yeah.
putting out my gifts, my taking my place in the world. You won't find a healthy three that hasn't cultivated some of that. There's one other traditional Gurdjieffian idea here. What at the center of the Enneagram is the circle and the triangle, right?
Yep.
It's the idea that reality manifests through Trinity. And the way we look at that from inner work is that there's always a yes and a no around every one of our issues. So your example is great. There's this part of me that wants to be important, wants to stand out, wants to take my place. And there's a part of me that thinks, no way, this is not safe, this isn't good. If you try to banish that part, it just comes up stronger later and in an unconscious way. The good guys trying to get rid of the bad guys, we've been doing that for a few thousand years. How's it going?
Right.
Is
Right.
never going to work. The inner secret here is the triadic idea and why Trinity was so important. They spent hundreds of years arguing about this in the dawn of Christianity. What is the right Trinity? Well, here we're looking at it just from the point of view of our development. I have to be able to drop back one into a deeper presence where I can hold the part of me that says, yes, I want to be important and step out. And no, that's not safe.
Hmm.
That just gets you in trouble. And when the presence holds the polarity, that
Mm-hmm.
triangle becomes a portal toward the circle, and the circle is the unity of God.
Wow.
So it sort of opens the door to me taking one step further in me becoming whole and becoming of service.
Wow.
So that's the way I think of it. And it's the same for me. There's a part of me that wants to, there are no healthy fives. Healthy fives have a voice. They have empowerment. They're embodied. They're physical. They're not just a head, right?
Right.
So, but for that to happen, I have to also be in touch with the part of me that just thinks that's too scary and risky.
Yeah.
Why would I want to be here in this crazy world? I have
Mm-hmm.
to hold both parts. You can't leave the scared child behind. That's
Mm-hmm.
another way to think of it.
Ah, I love that.
You have to love that scared part of you too,
Yeah.
and that doesn't happen by our ego. As I'm saying, it's kind of miraculous how it happens.
Yeah. So the security point and we don't have to go through exactly because they would need to. I would love for them to get that course, Enneagram Awakenings, because you do such a great job, kind of nuancing it all. But the 1 goes to 7 in security point. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. One goes to 7 in security. So the ones want to run away to the circus, and
Mm.
nobody jokes around better than ones when they're relaxed, when they think the coast is clear. They're very funny. They're very engaging. They'll try things and so forth. And ones have a lot of curiosity, but that one fixation clamps it all down. So, well, you can't do that. Got to get serious again. But
Mm-hmm.
it's when you sort of can understand that longing for freedom
Yeah.
and the part of you that's trying to be safe, and you can hold them, it opens to a kind of freedom that isn't the acting out of it.
Yeah.
It's a more spiritually based sense of freedom, and that
Yeah.
doesn't impede your desire to be good and to
Yeah.
to So it's like holding the contradiction. And
Well,
the well, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say one of the things that I remember you saying, and it was probably a different class, but I mean, it was so profound. You had said that the resentment of the one is actually sorrow and grief
Yes.
for not having the childhood and the freedom
Hmm.
that they long to have. Am I saying that right?
Well, yeah, it's about a number of things. It's that's part of it, but it's also grief for, when you could go again scripturally. It's for the fall of
Mm-hmm.
Adam and Eve from paradise, that we humans seem to have fallen away from our real place in the cosmic order, in the divine order. And
Yeah.
so the ones can't forget that there is this divine order to things, and we ain't living it, and they
Mm-hmm.
suffer it. But it's at the root of it is grief.
Yeah.
It's so sad for them, they can't bear it. And
Yeah.
so anger, as I teach it, is mobilizing rather than just being struck to the ground with grief. Anger gets me up and trying to do something about it, but it creates a kind of trap of a pattern, even though the motivation comes from something real and good. That's true
Mm-hmm.
for all the types.
Yeah. And then two goes to four
Two,
in security point.
that's right. Two goes to four, and as I said, it's like two starts to see whether or not I like it. I have resentments. I have envy. I have jealousy. I have bitterness. Oh no, 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 not me. Public. I don't want, or if it feels risky, I don't want you to see that. I'm just love and kindness and goodness all the time. But when with certain friends where I feel really safe, I'll let you know how bitter, angry, hopeless I feel, sad I feel, and all those kind of messy feelings. The two's inner critic says, no, you can't have that. Loving people don't have that. But I have to be willing to see whether or not the inner critic likes it. I do have that.
Right.
And I have to be with the part of me that just wants to be with the truth of my heart, and the part of me that says that's not safe.
Yeah.
And somewhere in there, an alchemy, a magic occurs that starts to move me into more real embodiment, real heartfulness. How can I really be with anybody in a real communion, heart to heart kind of situation if I can't be honest with myself about what I'm feeling?
Right. Right. I just love that. And like I said, we could go around the whole circle, and I'm sure everyone's dying for us to, but they got to go get the course. Um, but then there's the missing piece,
Yeah,
which is the same direction as the stress point.
that's right.
Can you explain how that works too? Because I think that is such a powerful concept, and so many people are unaware that this is actually a direction they not only can move, but it is something we want and need them to move towards.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting. I used to say that in the direction of security or integration, the shadow is in the lower side, the lower levels. In this direction of stress, the shadow is in the higher side, the healthy
Mm-hmm.
levels. It's like it's not shadow in the sense of being dark or bad, but I just don't see it. I can't own it. It doesn't make sense to me. It's
Right.
not part of me. And so, usually, when we look at the stress direction, if you look at the healthiest aspects of that, the essential, the spiritual gift of that point, we're cynical about it.
Mm-hmm.
That can't be true. You go and tell those fours that love is like I was just saying, love is the bottom line. Love is everything. Love is everywhere. You can't really be without it if you go deep enough. And the suffering four goes, that's nonsense. It's hallmark. That's spiritual ridiculousness. I don't believe it for a second. Yet, if the four does some of that shadow work with one and gets more grounded in themselves and starts to feel their own goodness and their own part of the sensible wisdom of the universe, they've got a shot at it. And
Mm-hmm.
the same, as a five, is the seven, what? Everything is joy and freedom and happiness. That's you're on good drugs. That's my conclusion. No, but I start to find out. I would say one of the biggest changes in my journey, when you ask about how I've changed, is that missing piece of seven has started to be
Mm-hmm.
real for me, in that I kind of have a gratitude and a positivity regardless of whether things are going my way or not. When I was in that hospital and they told me I might not make it, I didn't lose it.
Yeah.
It was just there. It's just there all the time. And the missing piece is like that. It becomes like an ingredient, like a color, like a quality in the background of your consciousness, and
Mm.
it doesn't go away. But it's at first we can't see it, we can't get it because it's so contrary to our self-concept that to admit it is to begin to lose my self-concept.
Mm.
So
Yes.
in other
Yeah.
words, yeah, if I how can I be the dark cynical five if the seven is correct? How
Right.
can I, and the nine is like, I just want to be chill and relaxed and everything. Good. But that's only part of the picture. I'm also here to serve, to be part of things. And I got to get a little bit of that self love and that beautiful three, glorious, that restoration, the sense of purpose and meaning. Then six becomes awake, vigilant attention to what's needed.
Yeah.
Whatever is needed, I'm here for it.
Hmm.
It's like good old Frodo in Lord of the Rings. What must I do? You know?
Yes, and what and for me, so I've kind of envisioned, my own journey as that nine of like, oh, here, Jeff, you be the speaker. You're a pastor. Everyone wants to hear from you, and then realizing, I'm permitting people to overlook me. So am I going to show up and develop myself, moving towards the three? But then comes the six, the missing piece, the high side of six, where I have the courage to step out
Yeah.
and use my voice as a nine in a way that actually blesses people. So it's all three of those at their healthy spot. Now, not that I'm there all the time, but I can see more clearly like, oh yeah, that is such not just a beautiful place to be, but it feels spectacular when I have stepped into those moments. Is that kind of how you would
Oh
see
yeah,
it?
yeah, exactly. And it's being willing to just take the journey of life full on, no hiding, no withdrawing. I'm here, baby,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah,
ready.
exactly.
I'm ready. Let's
But
live
like you said,
what we got.
there's that younger part of my heart that's like, wait, that's kind of breaking the so to call rules. We have to don't assert your voice. And that's where the adult version of ourselves, the healthy side, is like, no, asserting yourself is the thing, is the good that work that we need to do. But it's hard. And
No, it is.
now,
It is. It's not. I always tell people the missing piece is not something you're going to get next week. I mean, sometimes we'll get like a little epiphany. We'll get a little aha, where just the clouds part for a moment, and you see this deeper truth.
mm-hmm,
It's like God is revealing it to you. The
yeah,
universe revealing it to you, and then the clouds may close back up. But it takes a long period of dedicating oneself to the process of transformation where we're ready to take on deeper and deeper and more embodied versions of that missing piece. It takes time.
yeah, and
But
which
it's again, if it was up to our poor little ego, it'd be hopeless. But
right,
really, it's not.
exactly. Which goes back all to what you were saying earlier, which is the whole idea of being present with
Yes.
oneself. And can you tell us once more, as we kind of wrap up, the new work that you've done and kind of the legacy or where you're hoping the Enneagram to move from here in the
Mhm.
future?
That's a really good question, Beth. Um, Gosh, well, there's a few things. I mean, the Enneagram, the early days, I think all of us, any of us, me or Don or Richard or Helen Palmer or any of Claudio, any of us back in those days, we just want people to know about it, right? And we wanted to get the message out. Well,
Yeah.
the message is out now, plenty. There's so many people who know about it now, and God knows how many people are holding court about the Enneagram. And as it's disseminated, of course, it's a little bit like the game Post Office, where somebody hears something and then they repeat it to the next person. And by the time it gets around to like the 12th generation or something, it's lost some of its original message.
Yeah.
So, one of the things I see happening is people beginning to take more of an interest in the core of it, like the
Mm.
conversation we're having. Like, what's this really for? How does it really help us? Yeah, my cousin's a six. So what? How does knowing that going to help me? Right? How is me knowing my own type going to help me? That's why we wrote Wisdom of the Enneagram. But I think there's a growing conversation. People have been playing with this long enough that they're starting to see the limitations of some approaches and that there is uh, a lifeline that's being tossed to us here
Mm.
if we take it as such. And, so growing groups of people dedicated to the inner work, to holding it, to being able to talk about it in different communities. Some days we're talking to a church group, and the next day maybe we're talking to some executives in a boardroom, and hopefully we have enough flexibility in ourselves to meet the needs of both of those populations in a way that's honest and real and really
Right.
helpful for them.
And
Um,
have you seen a big shift from the 80s, 90s, so to speak, that generation and this younger generation and their willingness to go inward or to think, or is it that they're just doing it differently? What is your observation?
well, that's interesting. Well, I think in the early days, there was a little more emphasis on it as something negative.
Hmm.
If you really look at, there was no talk about the spiritual side or the gifts or anything. You go back and read Claudio's early work, or you hear the way it was taught in by Helen Palmer, or even Don Riso was saying, unless you get your act together, you're going down those levels. It was all kind of a little scary, and that's how it was originally brought. That's I came in a little bit from left field. Like I said, I
Mhm.
didn't learn it from those lineages. I learned it from the Gurdjieff work. And my whole idea was, if it wasn't about presence and us learning to live a more conscious life, I didn't see the point of it really.
Hmm.
And I think it's kind of a more of a mix now. There are a lot of people who still using it in kind of, oh, I so resonate with the four, and oh dear, you're such a two, and just talking
Hmm.
about it, and sort of, it's inevitable. You go through what I call Enneagram adolescence.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
get this new toy and it's so interesting. You gotta like type everybody in your world, and you do that for a while. And hopefully at some point you recognize, there's a little more to this than that. That's fun, but let's there's a richer game here. And then there are people, what is encouraging is there's a growing number of people who know the deeper work and can help people and can point the way for them.
Yeah.
I'm not When I first got into all this, I've told this story before. I was looking for this work. I mean, Gurdjieff work is hidden, it's secret. The real Gurdjieff
Hmm.
work, it's not public. And I was directed to it by a guitar player who was one of my heroes named Robert Fripp, who had the band King Crimson, and he played with David Bowie, did the song Heroes, and did this. Anyway, he had been in the Gurdjieff work, and he one of the things he said to me I never forgot. He said, "The age of the guru is over.
Hmm.
It is the time for older brothers and sisters to help the younger brothers and sisters,
Hmm.
and together we will pull each other up by our own bootstraps, and we'll climb the mountain together." And I thought, man, that is so true in my experience. So
Hmm.
that's what I see in the Enneagram community. We have people who've been at it longer, who've learned the nuances of it and can offer help and support. And we can just be amused at the cuteness of the newcomers who are just totally hung up on typing everybody in the world and arguing
Right.
about the type of famous people and all that stuff that we do.
Yeah.
Uh, but there's another step. So that's a big development in my point of view. The other one is just, I think people are finding more intelligent ways to apply it
Hmm.
in business, in religious communities, in coaching, that it isn't just a question of describing the type and somebody finding out they're that type. That's a good starting point. But I think there's more intelligence and nuance about how this knowledge can help people in their endeavors in life,
Yeah.
be they
Uh,
material or spiritual.
yeah. That is so good. Well, what are some ways that people can learn from you, whether it's books, classes, events? Where are you at and where are you going in the future?
Well, there's a few things. I mean, the books that I did with Don Riso are pretty readily available. You can get them through any bookstore, Barnes and Noble. You can get them through Amazon. Riso and Hudson. You don't have to look too far. If you Google me, you'll find me. Uh,
Yeah.
but I think the, can, what I'm doing these days, I have my own website, russhudson.com, just my name.com, and I do things like I do a monthly practice a kind of prayer meditation practice that people can do. It's free when people sign up for the website. So we try to put things out to help along. And I do workshops and things through the website. I do collaborations with other teachers, and I've got a few of those planned that will be probably live, some live events, some online events.
Yeah.
Uh, I have that audiobook, uh, The Enneagram 9 Gateways to Presence, which is more about the things we've talked about in this conversation. And it sounds true, and it's also on Audible.
Okay.
And I'm also working on a book on how the Enneagram can help us with creativity.
Hmm.
I'm working on that with my dear friend Catherine Bell. She's up in Canada, and we get together and work on writing it. But our aim is not like here's a point nine's creativity, here's a point five's creativity. It's more like, what does 9 teach us about creativity? How does it help us? How does it hinder us? How does 1 help us? How does it hinder us? So it's a book really about opening up the channels of creativity. So we're excited about that one, and
Yeah.
we'll see what the future brings.
Yeah. Oh, so exciting because, like I said, earlier, you literally are probably my favorite teacher to listen to. I just feel like the way that you explain things and nuance things and bring this complexity of the Enneagram into a place that the everyday person can listen and understand and then apply it pretty quickly into their own life. So I just really want to again say thank you so much for all the work you've done over all the 4 decades that you've been using the Enneagram, and just keeping at it even when I know that there's so many people out there that know it and they're not using it correctly, but I find you being so gracious and kind to continue to help people to understand the real work of the Enneagram. And so I just want to thank you for that, and I hope and pray that you will continue to heal and get better every single day. I know that what you went through the last month was super scary, but also it sounds like pretty amazing, and the new trajectory you're on. So I pray that you have the time and the space to heal. But again, thank you so much for all that you've done for us.
Thank you so much for having me, Beth. This was really fun, and may our conversations continue.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I hope that you guys enjoyed that conversation with Russ Hudson as much as I did. I could have gone on and learned from him in so many ways. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. So I hope that you will go to russhudson.com and learn from him, to find his work, his material, his teachings there, as well as on Instagram as Hudson_Russ, and on YouTube, Russ Hudson Teachings. There are so many things that you can learn from him for free on YouTube. Well, as always, the Enneagram reveals your need for Jesus, not your need to work harder, because it's the gospel that transforms us.